Constructive Criticism is sponsored by Oasis Games. MTGOasis.com is the place to get cards for your next Magic event. Try them out with code CCMTG for 15% off of your first order, and use the code WouldThatBeGood for 4% off of every order. Want to support the show directly? Head on over to patreon.com/CCMTG to check out some awesome benefits and future goals for the show. Thanks for listening, and here's this week's episode of Constructed Criticism. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 300 of Constructed Criticism. I am your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co-host, Matt Kling.
Hey, how's it going?
And many, many guests. We have Trey McCarnan.
This is the sound of my voice.
Mason Clark.
Oh, I have to come up with something clever now.
The Hinder Father, Michael Hinderrocker.
What's up?
Seth Manfield.
How's it going?
And John Stern.
Hey, everyone.
You know, it's not every day that you get to be joined by the best Magic player in the world, designer of Magic the Gathering, GP topic competitor in Matt Kling, the grandfather of Canadian Magic, the man with the most soothing voice in podcasting, and Mason Clark.
Why did you mention me twice with the best Magic player and then at the end? I'm just very confused. And you didn't mention Seth at all. It's very awkward.
Yeah. That must have been my mistake. I apologize.
It's okay. There's a lot of people here today.
I'm sorry. I'm just busy counting the trophies behind Seth while you said that. So what was it you said?
I have so many. They have their own room. I don't want to compare to Seth, and so I think I go in this room today. You know, he knows. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I didn't hear you talk about me at all. That's fine. I'll just be a quiet voice in the background here.
Well, it's nice to have mostly everyone here. We're missing 3, but I had to stop at 7. I didn't actually think it would be reasonable to do a 10-person podcast, and 7 might be unreasonable too. But today we're going to get right into it. Today's kind of a special celebration episode for those who haven't listened to kind of the 50 landmark episodes. So every 50 episodes, we kind of just do a special celebration for the year. And this is the 6th one. It's the 6 years of Constructive Criticism, and it's an exciting one. And one that we're gonna be talking about the experiences of both 300 episodes and just kind of the things that we've learned from Magic the Gathering in general. But before we get there, we have an ad read from our sponsor. Trey, take it away.
Oh, I didn't prepare anything.
I feel so lied to.
I guess I could try to wing it. Let's see what happens.
Hopefully it's as good.
A modern league, a standard league, a vintage league onward, into the Valley of Magic for episode 300. Forward the CC Brigade, charge for the mics, he said, into the Valley of Magic for episode 300. Forward the CC Brigade, was there a man dismayed? Not though the players knew, the Patreons wondered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die, always improving. Into the Valley of Magic for episode 300. Golos to the right of them, Golos to the left of them, Golos behind them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the field of dead, covered in a zombie smell. All that was left of them for episode 300. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild things they've made, all the world wondered. Honor Spencer's dream he made, honor the CC Brigade for another 300. A big reason that this show has been here for 300 episodes, and one reason why it will be here for 300 more, is the good people at Oasis Games. So head on over and show them some love, and you will receive some love in return. Go to mtgoasis.com and use CCMTG for 15% off your first order, and you can use code WouldThatBeGood for 4% off every order.
That was a good one. It was almost as good as the fact that I've now seen Matt Kling make 3 decks out of Crocs. Deck boxes, I should say. I think people will enjoy that. Thanks for preparing that, Trey. You didn't have to do that, and it was sweet of you to do it.
He didn't. He winged it. He said,
He didn't have to do that either.
No, just off the top of the head. So.
Well, let's get right into this. We really appreciate our sponsors at Oasis Games. We also appreciate our patrons. You can head over to patreon.com/CCMTG to become a patron of this show. Every single one of you means the world to us. Whether you've been a patron now, whether you be a patron in the future, and whether you just are listening, we wouldn't be here without the people that support us. And, it means a lot. It means the world. So thank you to all of you. So let's go into our main topic this week. We're going to talk about learning from experience. Weirdly enough, 300 episodes means that we've been doing this for a little bit over 6 years. And that's kind of crazy to think about. And 300 episodes for the show means that I have too much time on my hands. Really, no. I think that it means that the message of the show has gotten to people and helped people, and we're excited to kind of talk about that this week. So, with that being said, this episode is going to be a little bit different. There's 7 of us, and we're going to kind of I'm just going to present the parts of the topic, and then it's in the notes who can answer. I think there's only one that's not for everybody, for what it's worth. But let's get right into this. So, how did the experience of being part of the show impact you, and did it teach you anything to help you through magic in life? And Mason, I'd like to ask you this first, if that's okay.
Sure, why not? Best Magic player on the podcast, might as well go first. This makes sense when you think about it. It's been really helpful in a lot of ways. I think I kind of mentioned this a little bit on episode 200 a while back ago now, like 2 years almost. But the podcast has been really helpful when it comes to just getting better at expressing my thoughts more clearly to people in a direct manner. And it's also been good when it comes along the lines of like the message of always improving kind of like seeps into your life and affects other people and affects like your job as well. So I think the podcast has really helped in those 2 ways, where taking that mindset and seriously applying it to things beyond magic, right? Because when you think about the idea of always wanting to get better and always improving at something, it really is helpful in everything in life, right? Because if you get stagnant with something, you're not going to improve, obviously, and then you're kind of like settling for where you're at. But if you're always trying to push yourself, then you're going to get better and better. And then once again, with my job with speaking to normally younger kids with attention deficit disorder, it's important that I kind of be precise. So that's kind of been the biggest one for me.
Seth, you actually started streaming almost the exact same time as you did the podcast, and it felt like doing those 2 things together. You just got better and better at kind of what Mason's talking about, that speaking aspect. I pop into your stream all the time now, and you've just gotten substantially better at it. Is this something that now that you've been doing it for a while, that you're enjoying more, or is it something that that the podcast might have helped you with a little bit?
For sure, Spencer. I think I didn't realize during my early part of the Magic career how actually interacting with the media aspect of Magic was going to be something that I should try to work on, talking to reporters or what have you. And then this podcast came along. I started it before the MPL was a thing, and then the streaming shortly thereafter. Definitely, yeah, very, very happy that I was invited to join the podcast and took advantage of the opportunity, because I feel like I've become a better speaker. I try to convey my emotions to my followers through Twitch now, but when I was on the podcast, that was definitely a big part of talking to people, letting people get to know me. And it's kind of hard to do that when you're just a silent figure in the community. So for a lot of my playing as a Magic player, I've just been like, all right, he's an insane player, but I can't really personally get to know him. And so I feel like a podcast is a great way to accomplish that.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump on this one?
Sure. I can go. I think that one of the things that I found out from doing the podcast, something that's sort of helped me a lot in Magic, is my tendency to sort of over-prepare for things. And being on the podcast made me realize that I can have success, maybe even more so if I don't over-prepare and just trust myself. And also, I went through a lot of ups and downs while we were doing the podcast in terms of where I was feeling about my involvement with Magic in general. And I really enjoyed the podcast where I was motivated and passionate about what I was talking about, and found it really difficult to sort of force myself when I wasn't really feeling Magic. So I think that's going to help me in other aspects to make sure I'm involved with projects that I'm, really passionate and motivated about.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We have for the people on the show, right? Both, I think you guys did 40 episodes, and then or maybe it was more than that. Either way, you both, I think, you and John and Seth, you guys had 6 months on the podcast, and then shortly after that, Mason and Trey had their time on the show, and it's really interesting to kind of see the show kind of come full circle and have Matt come back on. But I personally have learned a lot from each co-host that I've had on the show, and I'll kind of take my turn on this. Like, I think I'm better at understanding how to work with different types of people because of this show. I think that when you work with somebody like Michael for, I don't know, 200 episodes or whatever we did, it's really easy because Michael's just like a relaxed dude that just likes to talk about Magic. And, not that, you guys aren't easy to work with. It's just different because now you have a new dynamic. You don't have those 200 episodes of time to spend. And like,
you're just throwing John and I under the bus is what you're doing.
No. Well, I was going to say, I didn't even know Seth and Trey when they started the show. Like, I had never interacted with them. And I think that the really cool thing is like, I'm certainly a better Magic player for doing the podcast with the four of you. But I think that I'm also just like better at knowing myself. And I don't know, I appreciate all of you for that. So, should we go on to the next one? Let's do it.
Sure.
Let's talk about our favorite podcast experiences really fast. This one's pretty easy for me. This has got to be Grand Prix Vegas. I think it was the second one when we had some listeners go ham with us. Like, we ended up going to a karaoke bar, and we ended up going down the strip and all getting like super drunk, and it was like one of the craziest weekends of my life. And we had other listeners like buying us shots, and it was legitimately crazy. One of them became a patron of like $50 for multiple months, and like, I mean, it was wild. And just like having that experience of having so many people come up to me and Casey at that tournament was pretty crazy. I think that the other biggest moment for me in the podcast is the video that Mason did for episode 200. I still cry thinking about it, and it was like legitimately the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. So
just wait till you see the video Mason did for episode 300.
That's not funny.
Speaking of getting thrown under the bus,
I also
You
think
backed up on me there.
I also think, like, legitimately, if you had told me at episode 1, hey Spencer, you're gonna do months and months of episode with the best Magic player in the world and the grandfather of Canadian Magic, I don't know that I would have believed it. Like, just doing the show with John and Seth was kind of like a dream come true, and it was really cool. So thank you guys for that.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I stopped doing it because of the streaming and the MPL and the time aspect of it, and because I really wanted to do it with John, and he was kind of down on Magic. But for the time that we actually were part of it, I appreciated being a part of it.
Yeah. Matt, what about you? You've been here since day one. What's your favorite podcast memory?
Well, I tend to enjoy the little things, so I would say that my favorite podcast memory was back on episode 200 when we were all telling everybody where they could find us. And Casey says, "You don't need to find me," and that was just my favorite moment. I think I laughed for probably 10 minutes straight.
I listened to that like a couple weeks ago in preparation for this episode, and I laughed in my car. It's just like, where can people find you, Casey? You don't need to find me. Michael, what about you, man? I think you did most episodes outside of me.
well,
Can that possibly be true? I've been back like 7 times.
Yeah, but one of your times
but
back was like
I didn't
one
have to
episode. Well, you did
Right.
have to quit. Wizards of the Coast required it.
well, but I didn't have to. I did not take a lot of breaks. Probably just the relationships that I built through doing this podcast. I think both with Spencer and with listeners, like, I probably wouldn't know Mason or Trey without having done this, and I feel very fortunate to have got to spend a lot of time working on something that was really enjoyable, and just everything that came from that has been really positive for me.
Trey Mason.
Trey, do you want to go first?
No, man, it's all you.
All right, so I have a couple. One of my favorite moments is probably realizing what fascinating meant for Michael Hinderaker. That like light bulb moment. That was just like a whoa, I get it now. Which was Michael. If you ever listen to the podcast, it was Michael's way of saying I don't agree with you. And it's probably terrible, but I don't want to say that on the podcast. So instead, I'm going to say fascinating. And then so that moment was a great moment for me. And I remember talking to him after an episode of that. And then I mean, like Michael said, like without the podcast, I wouldn't have met like. There's like no way I ever would have met Kling or John or Seth or you. Or I guess I would have met Trey. I knew him before the podcast. But like most of the people here, the majority, I just would not have met without the podcast. And not only that, I wouldn't have met other people. You know, like if I hadn't reached out to Spencer about helping with the podcast when I was a listener, and then Spencer taking that chance, and then I like never meet Chantel or Zyla or Teresa or Autumn, and then because I never meet them, I never meet Emma. Because I never meet them, I never meet so and so and so and so and so and so and so, and it goes on and on and on. And the podcast really opened up the doors for me to meet a lot of awesome and really cool people. And yeah, it's amazing. So I echo what Michael said. Like the people in the relationships I formed from this are crazy, you know. And I talk to Spencer like daily, and I make fun of Michael like daily. So it's just been a crazy experience. So
It's not every day that I get to jump on and appear in and just hear Michael just berating Mason. Oh, that is every day. I do get to hear that every day.
it's a special
They say
thing.
you can't have it all, but it really depends what you're talking about.
If you set your bar low enough, like me, you can have it all.
Trey.
I learned that being the only person with a scripted portion of the podcast on a weekly basis is not necessarily the most fun thing to do.
Once again, man, you said you want to continue the ad read, and I was like, yeah.
But that was a wild time, and I appreciated the freedom to do whatever the hell I wanted with that section, which was increasingly insane week to week. Also, I very much enjoyed getting the reviews that apparently my voice is buttery, which is information that I did not previously have before doing the podcast.
It's like a nice biscuit, man. You got a nice biscuit voice.
I don't even know that it's a compliment necessarily, but it is something now that I know.
Butter's great. How could that not be a compliment?
Where did we go?
It's delicious.
What was the restaurant that we went to, Matt? That was.
I mean, butter might be delicious, but if it really depends on the context and the inflection, I think. If someone, tells you you're looking buttery, I'd be concerned. No offense.
John?
I don't know. I really like Trey's ad read. That was a pretty good podcast moment.
That was actually my favorite ad read. That was pretty great.
Oh, thank you. I saved it for last, just for you, Clean.
Whoa. Does that mean you're not doing one for 350? It's just.
I don't know. That's a lot of time in the future.
It's like
that's future
50
Trey's
weeks.
problem.
Who could even count that high?
I think my favorite. I mean, I don't know if I have like one specific moment, like the podcasts where, if I did well at a tournament and I came on to talk about the deck and all my thoughts were, ready to be spoken, were really enjoyable for me. And also another thing that early on when we started the podcast, Spencer, you were telling me, oh, you're going to be great at this, or you'll enjoy it or whatever. And I was, kind of reluctant to believe that. But then having like a listener come up and say, hey, I'm listening to your podcast. I really like it. It's been like, it was really a good moment for me. The first one was at SCG Vegas. And there's a couple others that came up to me and, I'm a Patreon. I really like what you and Seth and Spencer are doing. Keep it up. And that's just a great moment for me.
Awesome. I liked any time that Seth got to talk about Karn for what it's worth. Those are the highlights.
Wait, has Seth got to talk about the great creator on the podcast, or did he leave before that?
The great creator was like not the primary Karn I was talking about, that's for sure.
Oh, I know, but I want to know if you love that Karn as much.
Definitely not, no.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that, it hasn't won him nearly as much money as,
Yet.
That's fair. Do you have cards in your? I haven't looked at your list today. Is there? You got some spicy tech coming out of the Pro Tour at the Mythic Championship, Seth?
Well, it's not legal in Karn Sign of Urza is not legal in standard, right? So.
Yeah, but you could great creator for a Golos.
You can pay wishes for a great creator for Golos.
Oh!
I'm doing that in Modern. Oh, you can take up your Golos and give it +2/+0. Holy cow! Wow. Is it too late to change your deck?
Seth, you already had kind of mentioned just enjoying the podcast, but is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, I thought John was really good at I didn't think I was like, I don't think I'm a great podcaster. It's just like a personality thing, but I was really impressed with John. And obviously you've been doing this for forever, Spencer. So like, you're like old hack, like telling us what to do and telling me to take a shot before the podcast to loosen up. And I'm like, all right, you know what, Spencer, I'm not going to take a shot. I'm going to bring a bottle with me. So in between, it's true.
Hyperbole.
It is 100%.
I mean, I did tell him to take a shot before the show. To be fair, it was a really fun show.
That advice continued throughout co-hosts, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, it helps. It helps lubricate the conversation. Let's move on from kind of just the celebration aspect and actually move into the meat and potatoes, as Trey would call it.
Would I call it that? I don't know that I've ever used that phrase on here at all.
All right, let's use the entire
from
buffalo.
The appetizer butter into the main course butter.
The main butter. This is the main butter of the show.
So let's talk about learning from experience when it comes to Magic the Gathering. So the first one is, what is the biggest thing playing high level Magic has taught you? And John, I don't know if do you get this grandfather of Canadian Magic joke that I keep saying? Are you aware of what this is from?
Yeah, it's Alex Haynes started it. I was called the godfather of Canadian Magic by someone in coverage, and he decided to turn that into a troll. So that's the origin of it.
Well, as the godfather of Canadian Magic, on the day of episode 300, could you share with us kind of, you've stepped away from Magic, but I mean, it played such a big part in your life. Is there something that high level Magic taught you that you think you'll carry with you forever?
Well, there's a lot of experiences that I've gained through Magic that I will carry with me. Just in terms of things I've been able to do, like traveling to all these countries that I would probably not have gone to. But in terms of like what I've learned from Magic, probably the biggest eye opener was working with the testing teams and realizing that really smart people are not always good at communication or collaboration, and that even on our best efforts, there was still a lot of things that we did wrong, and sort of the takeaways from that and what I think it takes to make a group work well together and be more than the sum of its parts, basically. So I feel like I've learned a lot about that and about how to sort of bring process to a group, which really I had no idea about beforehand. So those kinds of things.
Awesome. Mason?
I'm still trying to get my thoughts on the order. Can you go to someone else and come back to me? I've got something to say. I'm just gotta.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hinder Father. I know that you're way better at Magic now that you play, 24 hours a day. You invent cards like Fabled Passage at lunch, but tell us about what high level Magic has taught you.
I think that playing high level Magic taught me a lot about focusing on process over results. I think Magic in general is a good game for teaching that. And I think as you start to realize how much worse you are than some other people and find yourself still winning, it kind of puts into perspective, at least for me, all of the. It did a lot to strip away kind of the entitlement that I think I had felt playing Magic at lower levels, where I just expected to win a lot and don't think I respected my opponents to the extent that you should. So I think playing competitive Magic has done a lot for me.
Yeah, I can kind of echo that in some ways. Just as far as like the podcast, I think that Michael and Matt and Quentin and Casey are all super great, but I had never interact. I mean, like I had done episodes with really great Magic players. Paulo had come on the podcast multiple times. John Finkel had come on the podcast, but I had never like tried to do the podcast long term with somebody as good as you, Seth. And it was, I would constantly text Mason after the episode. I'm like, dude, Seth is so much better at Magic than me. And it's fun. I mean, you talk about like how good John is at podcasting, and I think John is great. But I think that I gained a lot of humility from Magic, and that's just from interacting with people like you and John, and with Michael, and just these people that they're just really smart. And you quickly realize, I think for a lot of Magic players who play Magic at a high level, you're really used to being one of, if not just the smartest person in the room. And what happens is you get in a room with a lot of people who are really intelligent and intelligent in ways that you're not. And it really puts into perspective, like, one, how hard Magic the Gathering is, and two, just how different kinds of people can be successful at different things. So I just agree with Michael on that point.
Yeah, I agree with like the last two has been said a lot, and to an extent what John said, but about the process and how things don't always work out and aren't the most efficient. I would say the thing for me about high level Magic and like starting to get into it and like playing all these SCGs recently, which obviously aren't comparable to like the Pro Tour or anything like that, but like I found that I really like. I always knew that I like competition against like myself and like trying to improve and stuff like that. But I found that I like that there's something that is completely like within my control, within reason, right? Like there's still variance and stuff in Magic, but like there's something I can do and go compete against others. And it's this cool thing where even though people are all competing against each other, there's still like this shared like want to growth and knowledge and stuff like that, and like improve and form friendships and stuff like that. And I really like that kind of competition. And so that's something where I kind of knew I liked before, but it was kind of clarified with Magic. And just like I mean, Michael and Spencer kind of stole like the second half of mine in a way, because they did a better job of forming their thoughts. But like getting to interact with people who are much better than you is a really awesome experience. It's one of my favorite things about Magic, is that I get to meet all these people that are super smart, like Spencer said, in a lot of different and unique ways sometimes. And there are things where it's just like God, you can't do like 2 + 2, but you can like describe this thing about this and so, and it's really eye-opening and awesome to get to interact with those people. And so it's been really awesome getting to have all of those learning moments and then learn from these people too, right? Like I listen to episodes of the podcast like Seth and John, and I get to like kind of see how they think. And the same thing for other podcasts, where just getting to interact with Michael, right, and talk to Michael about like, why would I play this deck or that deck, right? Or same with Kling or you, and just getting to interact and see your different viewpoints is a really awesome experience. So that's probably my favorite thing of high level Magic.
Should we go to the elephant in the room that everybody probably wants to hear, the Hall of Famer? Seth, what is? She's such a brat. Seth, what is the biggest thing that playing Magic at a high level has taught you?
So high level Magic has, obviously I've been playing Magic at a high level for about 6 or 7 years. I would say I've been like a pro. Like I became a gold pro, and then eventually platinum, and then I made it to the World Championships in 2015, and etc. I got these trophies. Even back in 2007 was the first time when I really knew that I could become a player at the the Pro Tour level when I won the Grand Prix in Daytona Beach. So yeah, it's been a journey for me. I've been playing for, it feels like forever, for the majority of my life, and I've always had this kind of this thirst to do well, to be the best player that I can, because I don't think without that motivation and without that drive that I could have gotten to the place that I'm at. And I am viewed as one of the top players. I'm in the MPL, and that's pretty awesome. You know, it is. I have seen as one of the top players for so long. I have seen other people who I've met and I've interacted with kind of fall by the wayside. Like either they get down on Magic or they find something else that occupies their time more, or they get married or whatever. And that's been my whole life. Like I've been like, all right, I'm into Magic. Let's play Magic. And I'm into the new cards. I'm into the new tournaments. And but you know, it's just a lifestyle that I've kind of become accustomed to. It's nice to see that this podcast has been around for so long. Because I've been playing for longer than the podcast has existed, so just to see kind of the span of Magic throughout someone's life is pretty exciting to me.
Do you? I have a question about yours. So, you know, once you've you've won Worlds, the biggest tournament you can win. You've gotten to the Hall of Fame. How do you keep that motivation? Like this is something that if you ask, I think anyone on this panel on this podcast, like I have thought of quitting Magic many times. Like how do you, once you've reached the literal top that you can reach, Seth, how do you keep staying motivated?
Well, I mean, he won Worlds, but he's never beaten me, so I don't know.
Oh, well, and that might never happen now, John. Look at what you've stolen that motivation from him.
I don't think we've ever played in like a sanctioned match.
Yeah, like I said, you've never beaten me. I don't know why you're clarifying.
I didn't want to bring it up, but same. I'm actually 1-0 against Seth.
I'm undefeated against everyone in this room, so that sounds way better.
No, I beat you at a Grand Prix right after you won the Pro Tour.
Wow.
So I'm actually 1-0 against you. I got very lucky in the team mirror.
I didn't know you were going to scoreboard him, but right there.
John's going to go in. I'm going to back him
well,
up. So.
I guess between Mason and I was going to try to say that I was better than Mason, but I can't anymore, so...
I'm very good at drawing
what is it?
cards.
What keeps your drive?
So, I mean, Magic is, I know a lot of you all have regular jobs. Mine is just playing Magic.
Sure.
So, you know, it's one of those things where it's super awesome that I get to use my skill set as just being good at Magic as in my everyday life, right? So I get to do that, and I supplement that with content, and being in the MPL is pretty awesome. I don't know that I'll always be doing the same thing. 2 years from now, Magic they could stop printing cards. That's always, you know, I hope that never happens. I hope everyone is,
Michael, tell us.
you know, Michael's probably sitting there being like, well, this is going to be the last set or whatever. But, I have some
Seth, have you had moments where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this right now, or if it has always been like full throttle forward?
Well, my motivation is I love what I'm doing, but it's because I'm at kind of the top of the game right now, like being in the MPL or being platinum or winning a lot of matches. Like that helps kind of keep me excited about the game. I think that if I wasn't in the MPL, I'd be forced to try to find something else, because there's really no other avenue to being a full-time Magic player right now. Now you could be a content person, you can be a Magic personality. We see that with streamers and with people who get, you know, the free invites to tournaments. But if my game started slipping, or the money wasn't there, or whatever reason, like it might be out of my hands, and I would just have to get a quote unquote real job, and that would just kind of suck, because this is what I like. If I could keep doing this for you know an indefinite amount of time, I'm happy to do that, and it's been working for me. But you never know.
John, before we go on to the next question, I want to pitch it to you. I mean, obviously you've taken a step away from Magic right now, but I mean, how many Grand Prix topics do you have? Like 17 or something?
I think it's less than that, but I don't have the number.
But I mean, you are a pillar of the Magic community for a long time. Like, I've
quit before. Like, I stopped for I think it was 2004. I took a job and I was qualified for PT in London, and that was when you got a cash award instead of a flight. And I was like, well, the flight's $1,000. I'm not gonna have time to test. I'm just not gonna go. And then as soon as I made that decision, I didn't play Magic for 8 years. So goes up and goes down. Who knows? I'm still qualified for Richmond. I haven't told them I'm not going yet, but I'm pretty sure I won't go.
I'm still holding out that 1% chance that you're gonna go.
I know. It'd be so great if you just went and spiked it.
Well, honestly,
I mean,
I think of him as I honestly think of him and not as like a troll, just as being like the Canadian Godfather of Magic. Whether you like that or not, just like there's certain people who I just think of growing up and playing Magic, and like John is definitely one of the figureheads. And to see people kind of drop off and get down kind of makes me feel a little bit sad. Not to put that on you, because obviously it's it's your life.
You have to make your pitch to get rid of that 1-0 on your record. But yeah, I mean, since I decided to basically not go, I haven't really thought about it at all. Like I don't even know. I mean, I saw that the deck lists were posted for the Pro Tour. I was curious what archetypes were played, but I don't know what any of the cards do. So like maybe I just need some time away from it, where I'm not so invested. For a lot of time I was playing, Magic's like the only thing you really think about. You're so obsessed with it, which is probably not a healthy thing. But that was what was necessary. I mean, maybe some people have the talent to just show up and win, but like I can't go to Richmond and do well. There's no way. Like I would have to, starting today, spend the next month playing Magic and catching up. And because I know that's not going to happen, the chances of me showing up are pretty small. Like I don't need to be there to go 0-3 in the draft, and but I'll be cheering for my friends and watching and seeing what happens.
Sure. Matt, what about you? What is the biggest thing that playing high-level Magic has taught you?
Well, what I learned from this podcast segment, and what I've learned from a lot of these celebration episodes,
it's never to go last.
Yeah,
or
going
close
first
last.
is just the best. Yeah, I mean, I had this big thing about humility, and it just seems a little drawn out at this point. Some humility and a little bit of validation also. Like when I top 8'd the GP Memphis, it was really nice to get that validation for something that I try so hard to do. It's not like I was a better Magic player after top 8ing the GP or anything, but it did make me feel like, it wasn't all for nothing.
Yeah. It's funny how that, like, I tell this to people all the time because one of the things that I get asked is like, that I've been asked. I don't really get asked this anymore because it's been so long, but that's like, how did, like, what was it like to qualify for the Pro Tour? Was like, was you just on your game that day? I was like, no, I made a terrible misplay in the round that I got. Like, I am the best I've ever been at Magic. Was not at the Pro Tour or the tournament that qualified for the Pro Tour. It was definitely before that. And it's funny how those things that aren't always in your control, dictate the narrative a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also, just to sort of follow up on that comment, like, for people who think they're good enough and haven't had that success, like there's just, you can't always control everything, and all you can do is basically, build a process that helps you get better and give yourself the best chance over and over again. And you might not play perfect when you win a tournament, but you also might play really well and lose. So you just have to take everything with a grain of salt, I think.
Trey, anything you want to add to this one before we move on to the next question?
I just want to say that I think one of the key points of everything that everyone is saying, and it's something that I've definitely learned from playing competitive Magic, is the amount of self-reflection that's required in order to do well, and that taking that across into other aspects of your life is also useful and valuable, because you have to be able to have those hard conversations with yourself. Are like, am I losing because of things are just going that way for variance, or is there something that I'm doing wrong that I need to change in my process? Is there something that I could be doing better? And if you're not willing to have those self-reflective comments and then also be willing to take criticism for other people, then you're not going to improve appropriately in order to continue to play at a high level. And taking that and applying it to things outside of the game causes a lot of personal growth as well. So I think that more than anything else.
Awesome. So the next question is just for Michael, John, and Seth. It's really interesting that on this specific cast we have, I think, Mason's the newest to Magic, so nothing. It's not his fault that this is true because he's great. But we have a bunch of people that have qualified for the Pro Tour. We have an SCG grinder. We have a person that's been a Bronze Pro and Top 8 Grand Prix. We have a person that's been a Silver Pro. We have a person that's been a Gold Pro. We have a Hall of Famer. Like we have, PTQ grinders across the board outside of John and Seth, and it's crazy to kind of see just how there are just different levels of Magic, and different. Now there's less of that with the MPL, but it's crazy to think about kind of just the different experiences that you can have from those. So I just want to ask, is there any different learnings that you received at different levels? Like, is there anything that you learned maybe as a PTQ grinder that wasn't as helpful when you were a Gold Pro? Or, Michael, for you, I'd even be interested to know, like, are there things that you learned at Wizards of the Coast that have made you better at Magic?
I guess just not necessarily at Wizards specifically, but like in the process of trying to improve at Magic as a game, I think you kind of go through you think you're good, you realize you're bad, you think you're good again, you like win a PTQ, you qualify for a Pro Tour, now you realize you're really bad. That's probably most of it. And like I think again this kind of comes back to humility, but the difference in ability between, at least from my perspective, inability between the best players and players who are very good, if I'm classing myself as very good and someone like Seth as in that really really best tier, it's not necessarily it's not that much better in like distance, but if you're to express that in like standard deviations, it is a lot. It's like on a bell curve, Seth is so much better than Magic than I am, even though I'm sure that we would make mostly the same plays. And I think as you get better, you run into that more and more, just because you improve less quickly, things come to you less easily. It gets harder and harder to make big leaps.
John, you were a Gold Pro for many, many years. Is there something that you learned at those levels that PTQ players might be able to take away from that experience from you?
I'm not sure that you learn something as a Gold player as opposed to at some point you have that status. But like one thing that I've always felt, and this sort of pushed me, is the fact that I feel like I have the capacity to be very good. But like when you say who's the best player, like it's not even clear what that means. Is it the best player playing a control deck? Is it the person who will do the best at the next tournament? And I like if you put me in a format where I don't have a lot of experience against someone like Seth, Seth will just beat me over and over again. Like he's gonna figure it out much faster than me. But what I felt is my strength is that I have the capacity to learn a lot and the capacity to work very hard, and I can raise my game if I put in the effort. And I think like that was kind of separated me at the Gold level from like maybe someone who was just trying to get to the Pro Tours. Like once I got there, it wasn't just keep doing the same thing I've been doing. It's like, okay, now I'm really gonna try to improve, because it's not just about proving that I'm this good. It's about being as good as I can be. So
you were always improving. Is that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, I think that's well. I don't think I've ever entered a tournament like that I cared about where I felt, okay, I'm ready for this tournament. I've never felt that. I've always felt like I could have used another 3 days working on sideboard. I could have tested this matchup a little more. I could have drafted, 5 more times and made sure I understand this archetype I've never played. And after every pro tour, whether I did well or not, and a lot of them I did not do that well, I always had like a personal retrospective and okay, well I wasn't ready and I lost this match. I lost, a mirror match to BBD playing green white tokens because I didn't come to the deck early enough for me to get my reps with it. Stuff like that. Or like I didn't really understand this rules interaction well enough. And that caused me, like sometimes you make a mistake in a game, but you still win the game and then it's out of your head. And just making sure like I recognize these are places where I wasn't prepared and how can I fix it, for the next time. I think that's a level of like, I think when I was early in my PTQ career, I just thought I was really good at Magic. And I didn't really think I was, best in the world or anything. I thought I was like as good as whoever the local kingpins were at that time when I was just starting. And it wasn't until later where I was like, okay, doesn't matter how good I am. There's people that are better at this game naturally, but I can beat them. I can compete with Seth maybe if I just like do everything in my power to give myself the best chance. So that's what I would say to that.
Seth, you've had the full gambit. You've gone. I'm sure you had. Maybe you didn't. You top aided. You won a Grand Prix in 2007. So maybe I'm wrong here. But you've gone through, ups and downs in Magic, and you've gone through everything. Is there something that you've learned at the highest level, or even something you learned through going through your experience in Magic that kind of is your biggest takeaway?
Well, I think, and this kind of reflects on some of the answers you all have already given, is just kind of setting your expectations, because we're comparing ourselves, and now everyone is comparing themselves to me, but it's like there's so many Magic players in the world playing the game. Like I wear my Magic clothes all the time out because I have like so many Pro Tour shirts and so much gear that they get.
Brags.
Yeah,
Humble brags.
It's like over half my wardrobe at this point. So like I'm wearing it, and they're like, I get so often hey, like, do you play Magic? And I'm like, yeah. No one knows who I am, but they recognize the game, and it's the game. So it's like there's so many players out there, and so if you're playing at a PTQ, you're still in the top like 5% or whatever. But like, I mean, there is a curve, right? It's like there's only a very small like group that like you always want to be better, right? And that's kind of the idea of the show and the always improving, and I think that's awesome. And that's I mean I've been doing it. I took time away from the game, but I think at some point you realize, and I think this is kind of to John's point when he was playing locally, and he realized like, yeah, I can do this. I know I kind of have an idea of my skill set, and I had that early on. I played other games. I had an upbringing games focused, and I knew that's how my brain works. And so I had that gift. Some of it is just a gift, and so I knew that I had the capability to be able to do it. But it's tough. It's always tough because I want to win every single tournament I play, and you're never going to do that. Like I think I played 150 Grand Prix, say maybe it's a little bit less than that, and I've top aided maybe 15% of them, and then like 1 in 5 times I'm gonna top 8, but then the other 4 times I'm like, damn, like this tournament sucked, so even though it's like a pretty high percentage to be top aiding, it's like it's gonna happen with everyone, and that's just the game. The game is full of failures and less full of wins. Like it's been a couple, like it feels like it's been a while since I've top aided a major tournament. Maybe I'm not like thinking about things in the right mindset, but it's just about everyone wants to do their best, and it's just kind of, I guess, just kind of pushing yourself to be the best you can.
In summary, it sounds like game recognizes game.
I want to piggyback really quickly on something that Seth just said, because I had a friend of mine just qualified for the Pro Tour, and she messaged me and was talking about how she was feeling really bad imposter syndrome, and I was like, okay, like let's just talk about this for a second. I said, what's your ELO rating? She says, I don't know. I was like, well, let's look it up. I think she was top something in the world, like top 1,000 or something. And I was like, look, you're in the top 1% of Magic players. You're better than that. She's like, what do you mean? Like, no, I'm not. I'm like, no, clearly you are. I mean, you were before you qualified for this Pro Tour too. Like, you were already there. And this didn't change that. You didn't even qualify via a Grand Prix. You were already just one of the best Magic players in the world. Now, what that means when you get there might feel different, right? It might be, oh my gosh, these people are a lot better than the people that I've been playing against. But that doesn't take anything away from the hard work that you've already put in. And when Seth talked about, if you're playing in PTQs, you're already in that top 3%. That's absolutely true. You are already adopting that mindset of always improving and already trying to get better. If you're listening to this podcast, why are you listening to it other than wanting to improve at Magic? And I think that's already going to give a lot of people a leg up. So let's wrap this part of the show up really quickly. Anybody can answer this, but I'm going to go first because, as Matt Kling said, that's the most powerful position to be in. On what is your favorite Magic experience in your time playing? And what has it done for you? And for me, mine is this podcast. It's pretty easy. I think when we started the show, we started it because, PTQs, we wanted an advantage. There wasn't MTG Goldfish. There wasn't, all of these sources, and we were gathering these sources, and we're like, well, let's share this. Let's share this information with the world. We came up with the power rankings to let people know, like, hey, if you're going to a PTQ this weekend, here's the 5 decks that you should probably be prepared for. In that time, I qualified for my first Pro Tour. Quentin qualified for first Pro Tour. Michael qualified for his first Pro Tour. Matt qualified for his first Pro Tour. Casey qualified for his first Pro Tour. And we always kind of practiced what we preached. We always wanted to be getting better. And, it was, I think that the moment where Quentin qualified for his first Pro Tour as a co-host of the podcast was like more impactful to me than even when I did it myself. Like it meant the world to me to see my friends improving. And the same thing is when Danny and Michael qualified on that same weekend. Like that was another one where, like, I think my kid had just been born like days before. I drove to the PTQ and gave them a hug. Like, it's always been about the relationships for me, and this podcast is the biggest part of that. So, but I open the floor to you guys. Anybody who wants to talk about their favorite Magic moment is welcome to do so.
Maybe not my favorite, but it has to be up there for sure. Was when Autumn won MC1. Forget, time flies. But yeah, when Autumn won MC1, and as soon as they top 8'd, I was had already signed up for the PTQ the next day because I was dead at the Grand Prix, and I went and dropped, and I spent the whole day watching Autumn and interacting with them, and just being there and just being oh my god, I'm positive Autumn's gonna win this. After they won the top 8 and then they won the semis against Reed, I'm Autumn's gonna win the Pro Tour. And then going to game 5, watching that, having that whole thing happen, and then Autumn winning. And then the biggest part of it to me always is that we're standing on the side, and if you've never won a Pro Tour before, you probably don't know this. They make you sit on the side over there, and then they call you up. And as Marshall's talking to them, these girls come up to Autumn, these little girls, and they ask for Autumn to sign these cards. And as it's happening, more and more kids start coming up to Autumn, and just watching Autumn be an inspiration to those people was amazing. And then seeing the social media reaction to that was also amazing. So that's got to be one of my best Magic moments. Memories.
For me, one of the moments that probably John knows about this one, but this was a few years ago when I was going to Grand Prix pretty consistently with a group of friends that some of them have dissipated, but we used to play Werewolf after tournaments, or hanging out before tournaments, or just getting together. Just hanging out, and I just really enjoyed playing with friends, non-Magic, because sometimes the tournament sucks. Sometimes you just bomb out, but getting to know that I was able to consistently have a group of friends to hang out with made the entire experience like much more enjoyable for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's always one of my favorite parts, like putting the group together and traveling and being able to have that time together, like throughout the course of the weekend, is always a blast. But one of the things that I've always loved more than anything else is when you start seeing somebody get the game, like when you see them start to like figure something out. And I had a moment where I was teaching my nieces and nephews to play, they're like 5, 8, and like 11. And the 8-year-old, I built them just like some decks out of a bunch of commons and uncommons that were lying around. And the 8-year-old was playing his first game solo Magic where I wasn't like telling him what to do or walking him through the turns. And he was behind on board, and he played a giant Harbinger, and he started looking through his deck and was like, oh, I can get another giant Harbinger so that I can play a creature every turn until I'm out of giant Harbingers. And I'm like, dude, you're 8, and that's insane. Yes, you can absolutely do that, and you should, to make sure that you're drawing a creature every turn. And like, that's a really simple situation, but it was like so exciting to like see him just be able to like intuitively put things together of what was supposed to be happening.
That's awesome.
I think just I feel like Magic outside of individual, game experiences or even tournament experiences just help me make a group of friends as an adult in a way that I don't think is easy. I think it can be kind of challenging to make friends as an adult, and I feel like Magic contributed a lot to getting to be friends with a lot of people I really like, and that has meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I guess I can go. So the question was like, what's your favorite Magic moment? Is that's the
Favorite
question?
Magic experience?
I mean, my most exhilarating moment in Magic was definitely the first time I top eighted a Grand Prix, which was GP Toronto. I come back to Magic kind of after a long absence, like the 8 years or whatever, and I went to Nationals, which was in my backyard. It was 3 blocks from my apartment because someone told me I had qualified as 99th out of 100 on rating. So I just went, and then I started playing again, and not really with any expectation. I wasn't gonna travel. I wasn't serious about it. I was still trying for the PTQs and stuff. And I had never, even though I had played on the Pro Tour for about 3 or 4 years before, it was always qualification to qualification. You queue on rating, win a PTQ, maybe you X5 or whatever you needed to do at that time to qualify for the next one. It was always a different way, and I never really had that breakout success in a premier event. And then won by for GP Toronto, and I was playing Jund with Thundermaw Hellkite in the sideboard, and just making top 8 of that tournament was like, wow, I didn't think I'd ever do this. I wasn't even really trying to do it anymore, and then I succeeded at that goal. But in terms of like what Magic experiences, I think it's probably closer in line to what Seth was saying about the things I do at Magic tournaments that are not playing Magic, and the friends I've made. Like I just went to a board game convention with Sam Party and Ben Weiss, and people I've met playing Magic, and also a bunch of my friends from Vancouver. And I don't think I would like, just even though we have this common bond over Magic, we're doing other things together. Or this one time, I went to a GP in Vegas a week early with Alex Macheton, and we said, okay, we're gonna like go to cafes every day for like 2 hours and brainstorm, how to make the perfect Magic process. Basically, we're trying to everything from team building to how to focus on improvement. And so we'd meet in the morning for a couple hours, we'd do something, go for lunch, and then go back to the cafe in the afternoon. And we did that for like 2 or 3 days, just to like break down some of the things, like just thinking about Magic on a process level was like really interesting for me. And it was nothing to do with the tournament. We weren't preparing for a tournament. We were just talking about Magic and how to get better. And that was kind of one of my favorite experiences with Magic.
it's funny how the gathering is always so much more fun for all of us than like a lot of other things. I think about I have advice for everybody. Don't go to Idaho with Matt Kling. That's the first bit of advice, unless you want to end up in the wrong city or you want him to attempt to put you in the wrong city.
What if we're specifically going to Pocatello though?
And I guess he's the right person to go with at that point. But one time we actually lost our keys at a bar after our friend won a PTQ in Bozeman, Montana, and that might be one of the most memorable experiences for me, Matt.
Yeah, that was definitely a great trip.
Yeah. So we're gonna kind of rapid fire these questions because we're almost out of time. So I'll actually just shoot them at somebody to answer them. And these are just coming from listeners. Some of them we've actually already answered. So I'm gonna shoot the one. Matt, you already answered what was the most memorable moment on the show. Casey telling people not to find him. Biggest improvement moment for being a host or the co-host of the show. Michael, why don't you answer that one?
I think learning to formulate opinions really did a lot for me. Just having to publicly take a stance forces you to try to reason through why you feel like you feel. And I think that that's pretty valuable both in just figuring out how to take positions, but also in refining your heuristics and kind of getting, this is how I felt about this on paper. Why was I right or why was I wrong? I think that was really helpful for me.
Seth, what was your mindset going into hosting, and how do you think what is the thing that you think you learned the most? I actually am either reading this question wrong, or what was your mindset going into hosting, and what do you think is the thing that you learned the most now that you are no longer hosting?
Well, my mindset going into this was, I hope I make it past the first week, because I honestly didn't know if we were going to get through a full episode. But yeah, it was. I learned about how I'm perceived by others much more. I've been learning. It's been a process for me, but as someone who has been in the Magic spotlight somewhat, I feel like I care a bit more about how I come across as a person, not just as a, this guy's insane at Magic, and we can just that's it. That's Seth Manfield, insane Magic player, but there's more to me than that. And I don't even like embracing that title, because then I've got this expectation to do well and everything that comes with that. So I just I like to let people into my thoughts, my life a little bit more, and so I feel like yeah.
It's so funny that you say that, because if there's a win that's the most memorable for me in Magic, it's probably you winning Worlds and just being brought to tears and being so happy. I literally cried with you. I didn't even know you at the time, but I was so happy for you seeing that emotion. So I hope that you get to share yourself, because the Seth that I know is, I don't know, kind of a sweetheart. So we can start that trending. Instead of Seth the insane Magic player, just Seth the sweetheart.
Yeah, might not have been the word I would have chosen.
No, sweetheart, that's perfect. We'll just get it trending on Twitter, guys. Go. I think you're a nice guy, and I'm glad that people got to.
Well, I hope my opponents in the E-League this week think the same.
I know one of the people in the E-League is now the host of my other podcast, and he told me that he hopes that you win the MC so that he doesn't have to play against you in the E-League. And I was like, interesting. All right.
Is E-League just MPL, or is that something else?
The E-League, it's a Twitch run tournament where I think you can sign up. All you have to do is, anyone can sign up for it.
All right.
But yeah,
I'm coming for that.
Short answer is no one knows for sure.
It's.
I mean, wasn't E-League what they used to play off IRC chat? Wasn't that the original? PV used to do that. I think it was called E-League.
Yeah, it's the one that came right after D-League.
Yeah, it was
remember
apprentice matches.
That's such a bad joke. Trey, Who on this podcast would win in a mud wrestling contest?
Oh,
You know
that's
what?
me. I'm much bigger than everyone else.
So I said John, Trey, or me, and then Mason said I'm an undefeated high school wrestler, and then I texted Mason. I said, "You do realize I was a varsity wrestler, right?"
My hand is the size of Mason's whole head.
Yeah, they have weight classes for a reason.
Yeah, that was
Wrestling
my
ain't gonna
thought.
save you.
I think Trey would win also for what it's worth.
So the real question is, who's going to win between Kling and Hinderaker? That's
Now,
what I want to
that's
know.
interesting.
I would be afraid that Kling would throw bows for what it's worth. I don't know that
They
he would.
have weight classes for a reason.
I'm a dirty fighter though.
Yeah, he does seem like he'd go mean. That's where
Kling's like, I thought the question was who's going to win the fight.
I would cheat. That's how I'm gonna win. Fine.
All right, anyone who wants to answer this can answer this, but it feels dirty. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate the New England Patriots?
10. Easy. Right in.
I don't
0.
know.
They're the best
And if
team.
you disagree, you can fight Trey.
If we complain about them enough, can we just ban them? I mean, that's what we do in Magic, right? So.
That's what I've learned.
I've
I mean,
never
they're more
wanted to.
powerful than anything we've ever been in Magic. Let's be honest.
I've never wanted to extend that principle outside of Magic until just now. It's like a realization has opened up in my mind.
Oh
Just
my God.
ban the New England.
Sounds great.
You're just salty because of your team this year.
They suck so bad. They're so bad.
This year? Hang on, roll back. We suck every year. You take that back. The Titans
They've
had
had
one
3
good year, 2001. That was
They've had
it.
3 consecutive winning seasons before now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The winning seasons, you're right. Yeah, okay. I went
Seth.
8-7 at the Grand Prix.
Real
winning
football's
season.
3 downs instead of 4.
That's true.
Did you guys see that the XFL is going to make less than the CFL?
Well, of course they're going to make less than the CFL.
Huh, that's interesting.
What does any of
CFL's
that
great.
mean?
Mason's over here like, I don't know what any of these letter comments.
I literally don't know what any of that meant.
XFL is the new 3-mana Planeswalker. It's coming out next year. Just be on the lookout for it.
Oh, it's
Designed
like
by
Oko,
Michael
but better.
Hinderaker.
Gotcha.
Comes into play with 12 loyalty on it.
Seth, this next question will shoot to you. What is your favorite deck that not only you played but constructed as well?
I really liked Blue-Green Heartbeat of Spring.
I don't know what that deck is.
It was in Champions of Kamigawa. You standard. Play a
You
Heartbeat of
cast
Spring.
Weird
Which is-
Harvest for
Yeah.
Drift of Phantasms. I
I think you've
Also
talked
played
about
this deck.
this
It was
like
super
10
nice.
times on the podcast, Michael.
Yeah, there
Probably
was
Spencer doesn't listen.
Early Harvest, Heartbeat of Springs. You could kill them with I think it was Maga Trader Immortals. Which
Oh, I do remember this actually.
Sakura Tribe Elder, Sensei's Divining Top. Just so many Kadama's Reach.
Sounds
Just
like
the cards that you played were just all gas. It's great.
So the next question is, but seriously, after 300 episodes, how has the way you play Magic changed? Like, what kind of player were you in episode 1 versus 300? Have you learned anything in 300 episodes that changed your life or Magic personally? Do you feel like the Magic podcast will stick around for maybe, I don't know, another 25 years? That's a long time. If so, what do you think the key factors for longevity are? I'll answer this one.
Did that question indicate that they think that it took 25 years to do 300 episodes before now? Because it said another 25 years.
Yeah, that's true. It does say that.
Quick, just trying to be clear as to what the point of it is.
It only took 6 and some weeks. But I'll answer this one. I think that we actually kind of expressed a lot of it. I think that Michael's comments and John's comments, I think everybody's kind of hit on this. But, when we started the podcast, I think that I had won the Utah State Championship a couple months prior, and cashed my first Grand Prix or something. I don't know. And I thought I was hot shit. And as we worked to get better at the game, I realized how bad I was at the game, and how much room I had to grow. And I think that the constant truth of constructive criticism is that there's always room to grow. I mean, Seth said that himself just now. I mean, you heard John talk about closing gaps and seeing those gaps and identifying those gaps. And I don't know. I think that that's just something that, for as long as I'm playing. I mean, I think I told Mason this a couple months ago, but for as long as I'm playing Magic, I'll be doing constructive criticism. You know, I don't see that changing. It's just kind of a part of my life. I've been doing this for 6 years. What else am I going to do on a Monday night? I don't know. So, and if there's longevity, it's going to be, can Michael Hinderocker make sets that Spencer Howland wants to play? Let's be honest. For as long as Michael's doing that, I'll keep going.
Seth, have you ever been state champion?
Yeah, I've been multiple times. Do you want me to
Same
pull
year
out?
I won.
I've literally
We won the same year, right?
Wow, is this the sickest flex of all time? He's like having to figure out which trophy it is for people who can't see.
He's just holding the.
Oh, he has
Oh,
multiple.
no.
My bad. I'm sorry.
I mean, those don't have your name on it.
Where's your state champion?
Could have bought them.
It's behind my head. It's right here.
Mason.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. This? Different
Yeah,
game.
What is that?
I missed two-headed giant. I was a two-headed giant state champion and a standard and a limited.
Michael conceded in the finals of a state championship for literally no reason.
I wanted to go home.
That is
often.
a reason.
To be fair, I got crap for doing that for years from my friends, and nobody gave you crap.
That's because I won the other one the day before. That was for my back-to-back multiple formats.
Yeah, so I had to
Don't need-
win the one the next year for everybody to shut up, and they still didn't shut up. They just said you could have been a 2-time state champion.
Yeah, but it's
But I
different for a
am
state
now. I am
champion
now
to
I am
decide
now a
not to
2-time
defend his
state
title.
champion. So take that, Seth Manfield. You did 2 in 1 year, but you know, different formats.
Is that supposed to be an insult?
I don't know.
I can't tell if it's a dagger or a fact.
I feel like the two-headed giant one is worth 2 anyways. It's like it's a 3-time.
3-time state champion, really.
Who was your two-headed giant partner, Seth?
Have we figured out who carried who for that two-headed giant yet? I just want to make sure that I know.
He's like, it was Kai Bude or something. Have I ever told you that
Just
story, Seth?
statistically, it's pretty likely to be Seth.
I'm going to tell my favorite Magic story really quick, just for the podcast. So I was not here for this, so this is secondhand information. But it was, in fact, at a pre-release. Phoenix Foundation was in Vegas for the World Series of Poker. And there, have you heard the story, Trey?
No, I just love that. I want to say that this is secondhand information, so it might not be accurate. In fact, it happened at this place.
Yeah. So
emphatic as to what
it's
the truth of it
it's
is.
the finals. It's the finals of a pre-release, and this guy is playing against somebody, and this somebody offers him. He says, "Hey, do you want to just chop and go home?" He says, "Bro, I'm a 4-time state champion. Do you know who I am?" And the guy looks at me and goes, "You're a 4-time state champion? In a row?" He says, "No, not in a row. That would be insane." And then he promptly smashes the guy, signs the match slips, and sends Kaibude on his way after 2-0ing him. It's my favorite Magic story. Not in a row, bro. That would be insane. I love it. All right, last 2 questions, really quick. Top 3 and bottom 3 foods. Trey, go.
Top 3 and bottom 3 foods. Bottom 3 foods are asparagus. I don't know, other gross
Pineapple
stuff.
pizza. Keep going.
No, definitely not. We've already had that conversation. I mean, top foods are probably like fried chicken. Fried chicken's great. You've ever had it? It's delicious. It's a delicacy.
A delicacy.
Steak. Yeah, steak and I don't know, something else.
Wow.
Something.
David Williams, calm down.
Korean barbecue. Hold on, I got your back. Trey. We got top 3 Korean barbecue. Probably Indian food, and then
really good.
the fried chicken from the Screen Door in Portland.
That's very specific.
You almost got it right, but it's pho instead of fried chicken.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, that's.
What's with this?
You
fried
went,
chicken?
you went Indian food, which is so broad, and then you went a very specific place for fried
Specifically that chicken. But
So,
that's the
I don't
thing.
know. I don't know if that counts.
Michael, we'll pitch you this last one. How has Magic changed in 300 episodes? Gameplay designed to even community.
Oko.
I don't know. I wasn't even playing Magic whenever episode one was. So I'm probably not the best person to answer this question.
Matt, what about you?
The question is what?
How has Magic changed in 300 episodes?
I don't know. I wonder often how much Magic has changed versus just how my perspectives of the game have changed. Like, certainly Magic has changed a lot for me, but I don't know that it's actually like a totally different game from when we started this podcast.
Yeah, I think that Magic players in general are better, and there's more information.
So I was definitely under the impression that there were a lot less brews at FNMs, but then I went to an FNM recently and then realized that the reason I think that is because I just have not been playing FNMs.
That's fair.
So,
yeah, that's fair. Well, that is going to do it for this. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Every single one of you holds a special place in my heart. I appreciate you doing this show with me. I appreciate the listeners for sticking around for 6 years. For those of you, I mean, we have patrons that have been around since the Patreon launched, and it's just really cool to see that kind of stuff. So thank you so much to all of you. Before we go, if you want to give a shout out, now's your chance.
Caw-caw.
Nobody. Did you say caca?
Yeah.
Pretend that I've made a sound that is also just a bird.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we will see everybody next week with another episode of Constructed Criticism.